Oops, there's a third. Uh-oh. All right, welcome everybody to our April 25th Monday meeting. We are meeting in hybrid. So we have some people online and others in the room. Barb, will you conduct roll call, please?
Director Beckett.
Here.
Red light.
Lights on my back. Here.
Director Walker.
I'm here.
Director Navarro Jr.
Here.
Vice President Villanueva.
Here.
And President Rice.
Here.
All are accounted for.
Thank you. We offer live streaming options for this meeting. You can find a link on our webpage under Find It Fast, or going directly to ysd7.org/board meetings. There's no public comment on our agenda today. We have public comment options during our business meetings only, which are held on the third Tuesday of the month. If you're interested in past recordings, you can find a link on our webpage to the YSD YouTube channel to view past meetings that were recorded and posted here. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have a student from Adams Elementary who will lead us in the pledge and read our character word of the month.
So I do this. Okay, Principal Cap, you're on.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity, members of the board and cabinet members. So I'm excited to introduce, I have Jimena Amazola Ramirez. Go ahead, Jimena. And I have Bruno Lopez that will be helping us with the pledge.
You just turned it off.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Awesome. Great job, guys. Good job. Hold on. Okay, you guys want to talk about the word of the month?
I forgot my name. Adaptable?
Adaptable, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Changing?
Yes, thank you. Ooh, thank you so much for being here with us today. Can you share with us your names and what grade you're in?
My name is Bruno Lopez and I'm in 3rd grade. My name is Jimena Amazola and I'm in 4th grade.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. What is your favorite subject in school?
Can I hear her?
Go ahead, Jimena, go ahead.
Math
Math.
and
Okay.
science.
In science? Okay. Go ahead, Bruno.
Reading and math.
Awesome. Well, you guys did a great job on the Pledge of Allegiance, and in reading the character word of the month. Thank you guys so much for being here. Any other board members like to ask questions or share any comments?
I just like to also thank our students for being here today and taking time out of your day. And I hope that you're having a good experience being back in school live and in person. And it's nice to see students. Thanks again for helping today.
What can I say? Say thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Next item on the agenda is the Yakima Acknowledgment, and board member Navarro will be reading that to us today.
Yes, today the schools of the Yakima School District rest on ancestral lands of the 14 Confederate tribes and bands of the Yakima Nation. The people of the Yakima Nation inhabited more than 12 million acres across Adams, Benton, Chelan, Douglas, Franklin, Grant, Kittitas, Klickitat, and Yakima counties. Today, we honor those Native peoples who are tied to the land through history, legends, and culture. We acknowledge their descendants who live in the world today. We thank the caregivers of this land who have lived here and continue to move or to live here since time immemorial. And acknowledgement is a simple, powerful way to show respect and a step towards correcting the stories and practices that erase Indigenous people's history and culture. It also honors the truth. As a school district, we will continue to build upon our relations with the Yakima Nation. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda are proclamations, and Teacher Appreciation Week is next week, the week of May 2nd to May 6th. Director Walker, would you please read the proclamation?
I would love to. Thank you very much. About a month back, I met with Director Beckett. I'm going to share some things that we talked about in confidence. I apologize right now for evidently no secrets, right? But one of the things that he mentioned was just how nice it would be to hear what's actually happening in our teaching and learning department, the influence that they have across the district, working together collectively, our directors, executive directors, led by Dr. Rodriguez and everyone else in teaching and learning. As she so aptly reminds us frequently, we are a teaching and learning organization. We did know that before you came, but you have certainly breathed so much more life into that statement. So I'm definitely thankful for her constant reminder of why we're here and who we serve and how we can do that better. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce and kick off this presentation with Dr. Jenny Rodriguez.
Thank you, Superintendent Green. Board Vice President Villanueva, Board President Martha Rice, thank you for joining us virtually, and members of the board. It's my pleasure to be with you this afternoon to share with you an update on the work we have been doing in the teaching and learning department this year. There have been a lot of shifts occurring, and we shared some with you back in the fall, and we've continued down that pathway. So, Barb, if we could pull up the slideshow. And then I think I have the clicker power. Yay, I do. Okay. So outcomes for our session today. This is a little bit lengthier report than what we typically give from the teaching and learning department because we want you to have a broad overview and enough depth of understanding that you could really talk about the key initiatives as we move forward when you're meeting with families and other constituents within our district. Our outcomes for today are to gain clarity on the teaching and learning vision underpinnings. You should hopefully be able to identify the 3 key strategies moving forward, learn about our 22-23 staffing plan and process, and understand the next steps that we're taking towards achieving our district's vision. We really have spent a lot of time in teaching and learning this year thinking about how we're going to operationalize our beautiful district strategic improvement plan. It is a very comprehensive plan. As you're aware, we had hundreds of people involved in building that plan. And out of that plan, of course, we have our 5 key goals. But if you go through the entirety of the district strategic improvement plan, you'll find that we've got not just goals, we've got outcomes, we have a variety of other pieces. There's 105 actually discrete objectives in our district strategic improvement plan. And that's a significant number of tasks to try and undertake all at once. And so we've done some thinking about this in our teaching and learning department around the difference between the strategic plan and strategy, and really identifying a couple of key strategies that we could then take forward as we work towards achieving those outcomes of the strategic improvement plan. In determining what those strategies might be, we took a look at the research base. Education is like any other industry or field. We have our own field of research about what works and what doesn't work. So we look specifically at the research base around organizational mindfulness, central office transformation, situating adult learning, and turnaround schools. We also know that there's a great deal of wisdom within the district, within our own ranks. And so we looked at voices from the field, including a thought exchange survey through our teaching and learning department, one-on-one conversations with every building principal in January. We did a survey of principals around the various support positions that exist within our district. And YEA conducted their own survey of their membership earlier this year, which was also considered. Additionally, as we start to narrow the focus, we wanted to ensure that what we were going after was strategically aligned to our Danielson Framework, which is our teacher evaluation and instructional framework that is adopted for our district. It's one of the 3 frameworks that is approved through our State of Washington Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. We also wanted to ensure that we are capitalizing on the equity policy that you as a board approved last spring. We want to make sure that's central to the work we're doing moving forward, as well as the district strategic plan. So I'm going to walk you really through the buckets of research and give you some of the background and really just the key design ideas that we took into consideration as we identified the 3 key strategies moving forward. And if you're interested in any of these particular topics, I'd be happy to share additional resources, research articles, et cetera, with you, but I thought that might be a lot to look at on the slides this evening.
I do have a question, excuse
Sure.
me. Can you remind me of the difference between the strategic plan and the strategic improvement plan? Because I don't think I've seen personally the improvement plan.
They are one and the same.
Okay.
Mhm.
All righty.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you bet. So the first bucket of research that we took a look at was organizational mindfulness. There are 5 key design ideas: a preoccupation with failure, which does not mean that we don't celebrate successes. We absolutely do, but we're never really satisfied, right? We always want to continue to be learning and growing. A commitment to resilience, which is not just about bouncing back quickly, but also about avoiding repeat mistakes. So really taking the opportunity to learn and to fail forward, as we talk about. A couple of these that are really key to where we're going as a teaching and learning department and as a district is the third bullet, deference to expertise, and the last bullet, sensitivity to operations. This is really about putting the resources and listening to the voices closest to the work, because they often have the most information to inform decision making. And it's really critical that we're paying attention to our frontline staff. We will, as district office staff, never know as well as the folks who work at the school every day with kids every day what students most need. So really, as we think about this organizational mindfulness literature, it is causing us to really consider, how do we offer professional development? How do we make decisions as a district? And who makes those decisions? And really thinking about our frontline staff. The second bucket of research that we have been spending a lot of time working with is around central office transformation. This is work that comes out of the University of Washington District Leadership Design Lab, which you've heard us talk about before with Dr. Meredith Honig and Dr. Lydia Rainey. And we have an ongoing partnership with them as we are pursuing central office transformation. The 3 key ideas that come from their research are that culturally responsive teaching and learning have to be integrated into core teaching and learning unit-wide. So you heard not too long ago, we had an equity audit report that was shared. And one of the pieces is really thinking about how equity is woven into everything that we do as a district. The second bullet is around teachers and principals leading their own learning. So we are really thinking about, how do we have individual learning plans for adults within the system, thinking about PLCs, which stands for professional learning communities. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then thinking about the integration of our school improvement plan and a redesigned data system that takes into account not just whole child data, but really the assets that children bring to the system with them. And the third central idea is that teaching and learning and human resources support that leadership. So we have to work hand in hand as we think about how we get the right folks on the right teams in the right places, and really be strategic in our staffing model to ensure that we have the very best of the best to serve our students. Teaching and learning also shifts significantly from being the provider of professional development and learning for adults within the system to being brokers of support and being able to connect the folks in the field together, as well as offer a set of curated offerings, which means that we don't try to be all things to all people. We get really systematic about what we're supporting in the system. The third bucket, which is directly related to that, is around situating adult learning. So if we're thinking about, there's a significant amount of research on how adults learn and what works in terms of professional development specific to education, job-embedded learning is absolutely critical. So often in the past, not just Yakima, but all districts would provide substitute teachers. Teachers would come down to the central office, or in our case, the PDC. They'd sit in a workshop all day long. They might practice a few things, and then they go back to their classroom. The research is really clear that when we do learning in that method, just like if a teacher were to get up and just talk at students for the entire hour, we will learn or implement about 5%. It's not good enough when we're investing our most precious resource, our people, our time, our funds. We need better than 5% implementation. So we have to move from that kind of pull-out model, if you will, to a job-embedded model for adult learning. We also know from the research that collaborative work leads to teacher learning, and ultimately that's what we're after. As teachers learn and improve their practice, it improves the outcomes for students. So having that collaborative work helps teachers to actually walk away with those reflective pieces that impact practice. And the last idea is that coaching promotes learning. And coaching, if you've ever worked with a coach, often if you're new, if you're a novice in the field, you don't even know what to ask. So I always think about going with a brand new teacher to observe other classrooms, and you might say, "What do you see the teacher doing?" And they're like, "Well, nothing. The kids are just taking care of it." And there's so much work that goes behind the scenes for it to look like the teacher's doing nothing. They've actually really masterminded the classroom environment if it looks like that. And as a novice, often we don't even pick up or know what we're looking at. So it's really important that you have that coach with you to make tacit knowledge explicit and really call out what is actually happening in that situation. Coaching also allows for modeling, co-teaching. It's that idea of expert consultation. And the last bucket of research that we took a look at was turnaround schools. This is very connected to all of the ideas I've already shared, but you can see the big 4 buckets here around utilizing an equity lens. It is about collective efficacy, which is the belief that our staff as a team can make a difference and can improve instruction and outcomes for students. It is absolutely about effective instruction, which is not necessarily exciting or shiny or new. It's about getting really laser focused on what works and ensuring that that's being implemented at all times in all courses, with all students, with all teachers, and really getting clear about that. There is a series of studies called the Beat the Odds Survey, the 90-90-90 study. These are studies that are 90% Latinx students, 90% free reduced lunch, which is a signifier of living in poverty, and 90% or higher achieving standard on state and federal assessments. So it absolutely can be done, and there really is no reason that our Yakima students cannot be achieving at a high level. And the last one, and probably the most important, is about staying the course. Again, it is just about doing the hard work and continuing to stay focused as we move forward. So we took all of those buckets of research and developed a theory of action statement. If we build systems and supports for PLCs, professional learning communities, induction, mentoring, and coaching, and principal supervision, and we provide access to high quality tools, then teachers will implement foundational instructional practices which lead to equitable positive outcomes for all students. You can see in the graphic here, it is really about how do we as a central office impact teacher learning, because teachers impact classroom practice, which impacts student learning. And as a central office, our lever really is around impacting principals so that principals can impact teacher learning. That's really what that central office transformation work is all about. When we say access to high quality tools, we have defined those. So this is the graphic that we're utilizing to keep our eye on the ball, if you will, to stay the course. So those professional tools are a high quality standards aligned curriculum that really cuts across all 3 of these key strategies. So we have developed this year a 7-year curriculum review and adoption cycle. We have worked with Executive Director Nissen and our fiscal department to really identify key levy funds so that we can ensure that we are able to purchase new curriculum as needed on a very regular basis for our students and our staff. The second and third professional tools around curriculum maps and standard-based unit design are all about determining what is it that kids must know when they leave a given course or grade level, and how do we make sure that they're going to get there and have consistency across the system, regardless of their boundary, regardless of which school they attend. It really is about providing an equitable experience for children within our district. The instructional framework also cuts across all 3 strategies, and we've called out 3 key components of that instructional framework: culturally relevant pedagogy to really make good on the promise of our equity policy here in Yakima. The second one is around dual language specifically, and the third one is around inclusionary practices. So once we had developed and identified those 3 key strategies of PLCs, induction, mentoring, and coaching, and principal supervision, it's really incumbent upon us to align our investments to those strategies. We have taken a look at the various staff positions throughout our district and bucketed those based on baseline certificated staffing. We have people who specifically support social, emotional, and behavioral needs of our students. We have staff who specifically support academic needs of our students. And then we have what I would call building-wide or district-wide supports. You'll see when you take a look at this, there's a lot of job titles, a lot of different people that we have that are not in the classroom. So we spent a significant amount of time really thinking about how do we put our money as close to kids as possible? And how do we ensure the money that is generated is truly being utilized for the students who generated it? So we get a lot of special programs funds in Yakima because of the students that we serve. We really should be ensuring that those monies are paying for staff who support those kids directly. So we developed a revised budget tracking system in the teaching and learning department this year. So we have put together a special programs monthly funding report. I'd like to really thank Amber Clea and Ismani for working on that for us in our department. It is bringing transparency to our transitional bilingual instructional program and Title III, which is also bilingual funding. Our LAP, which is Learning Assistance Program, both base and high poverty, our Aussie dollars, which is the funds for schools that are in improvement. And we have taken those forms and then rolled out projections for next year. So again, we're really thinking about how do we take those funds and focus on our best resource, which is qualified, high quality staff, and spending that money again closest to the students who generate the funding, which is at the building, not necessarily at central services. We have reduced the staffing within our teaching and learning department by about 10 staff this year already for going into next year, because we believe it is critical to put those funds towards staff that work directly with kids. We also did some work with the possession control and staffing system. So we worked with the Center for Educational Effectiveness, which I know you've met John Steach and some of his colleagues before, and put together an entire position control and staffing system. So we are implementing a new model of certificated staffing in our district this year in preparation for next year. We were able to build out the calculations to take 3-year rolling enrollment averages. So we look at our enrollment every single month of the year and average over the year, and then we averaged over 3 years to have better trend data to predict next year's enrollment, which is directly tied to the basic education allotment, the BEA funding, and determining how many teachers we need at each site. It does help us also to address the enrollment decline, which does directly impact the budget that we can anticipate for next year. We also needed to ensure that we had appropriate staff as we continue to scale up our dual language model to serve our bilingual students. Additionally, we did put some new positions in place for this school year around the K-3 reduced class size funding, and we have found that there might be some different positions that are better funded with those monies, and so we've made some shifts around who's funded by which bucket of funds. And then again, lastly, and most importantly, alignment to the BEA state prototypical staffing model to ensure that we have sustainable funding going forward. We are working towards going through a similar process for our classified staffing. And then in addition to that, we developed a Yakima School District staffing model for next year. This is a lot of text on here. So this is the staffing model that we are operating from for the purposes of staffing for this school year. So really thinking about what is the base staffing that every school should have in order to support students. And then thinking about the support team, which at the elementary level also includes specialists because the schedule looks a little different for our elementary kiddos. And then the top of the triangle is the principal choice menu. So as we thought about what should we have in place to ensure that all students have access to an equitable education, we thought about every school needs a principal and an assistant principal. Every school needs a counselor. We need grade level teachers based on that BEA prototypical school funding model to ensure that we have appropriate class sizes. We are working through our bilingual certificated and classified staffing model right now. Special education also has certificated and classified staff. And then again, as I mentioned, we're working through that classified process. At the elementary, one of the pieces that we took a really close look at was our specialists. At several of our elementaries, we do not currently have the ability for teachers of the same grade level to have their planning time at the same time together, which is referred to as common planning time. So it's not anything new in education, and it's pretty critical if we want to get serious about professional learning communities. So we needed to add some specialist time in order to make that happen across the system. So we've added a 1.0 STEAM specialist, and we're really excited about the opportunity that we'll have for our elementary kiddos. In the support team realm, we have IFs, which stands for Instructional Facilitators. We have academic specialists who really are that tier 2 and tier 3 support for students who need a little extra. We have a behavior specialist who does the same thing on the behavior side of the multi-tiered system of supports house. We've got our librarians, our reading interventionists, nurse or health aides, and ITIS, which is in instructional technology integration specialists. So they help teachers to effectively use technology in their classrooms. So a lot of adults to support our littlest learners. So we're pretty excited about having a systemic model of staffing across all of our elementary schools for next year, and ensuring that at every single elementary campus, we have common planning time built into the schedule for teachers. We went through a same process for middle school and for high school. It's going to look very similar, except that we don't have specialists in the same way at the middle school and high school. It's just part of the master bell schedule. It's periods within the day. So the base staffing looks a little bit different. You can see 2 assistant principals. That's based on the size of the schools. We do have, again, grade level and content teachers, bilingual staff, special education staff, and classified staff. The other piece I'll just call out for you in the staffing model graphics is we have identified buckets of funding tied to specific positions. Historically, we have sometimes piecemealed positions for our buildings, and it does create a strain for the employee because they have to track the work that they do with each bucket of money, which might have different types of work approved. So by ensuring that we have individuals, so all instructional facilitators in our district will be paid from Title I next year. They're able to do twice annual certification around the work that they do rather than daily, weekly, monthly time and effort reporting, which will also save on some of our fiscal and our special program staff as well. At the comprehensive high schools, this looks very similar to the middle school. You can see, though, that they have 2 instructional facilitators. They have full-time academic specialists and behavior specialists, which is funded out of the Learning Assistance Program High Poverty dollars. Because of the enrollment at Eisenhower and Davis High School, it's significantly higher than any other campus. They generate a great deal more funding. So that's why you'll see more staff that's allocated to them. It's really tied to those dollars. So again, bringing you back to these strategies as we kind of talk about all that staffing, it really is about generating a staffing model and putting the staff in place to make good on these strategies. So as I've talked about that professional learning communities, the importance of having common planning time for our teachers is really critical to being able to pull that lever. In the induction, mentoring, and coaching world, we are scaling up the support staff in that area, as well as in the principal supervision ranks. So I'm going to walk you through just next steps for each of these strategies, and then I'll open it up for questions. So strategy number 1, professional learning communities. As I've already mentioned, we did design a staffing model in order to support PLCs through this master scheduling at our campuses. We also have a PLC focus at our June and August leadership retreats, which is for all of our principals, assistant principals, and central office staff. We are taking a great number of teachers and administrators to the PLCs at Work conference in August. It will be in Seattle. So each building had a certain number of seats that they were able to bring staff, and were able to utilize special programs funding to pay for that training. And then Wasa has an Ensuring Equity Through Implementation of PLCs at Work, which is a 3-year cohort. It will launch this summer, and it is for a district leadership team to shepherd this work through for the next 3 years. So again, this is not a shiny thing, and I'm not going to come back to you in a year with a different strategy. You're going to be hearing about professional learning communities from me for a number of years. So I hope you're excited. Strategy number 2, induction, mentoring, and coaching. Currently, we have 1.5 teachers that serve as best beginning educator support team mentors, induction mentors. We are increasing that to 3 full-time mentors for next year to ensure that all new teachers really truly get a world-class support system when they become a Yakima School District teacher. We also are developing a 3-year teacher induction professional development model in collaboration with our partners at Leading Educators, which will launch in August with a full week of new teacher training. So we're pretty excited about that. We are also housing the teacher induction team, the admin intern supervision, and new admin induction program under the principal support team beginning July 1st. So really thinking about induction as a system across many levels of the organization and bringing that together. And then we are moving towards maximum job embedded professional development, and there will be extremely limited training that is provided through pullouts and subs. One, as I already shared with you, it doesn't work. It's not super efficient and effective. Number 2, we think it's critical that our kids, who we only see for 180 days a year, have their quality teacher in front of them every single day possible. And the third strategy, principal supervision, we are also increasing. So we started this school year with just one. Kathy Page, who we're quite excited, is finishing her doctorate and graduating in a week. She'll be Dr. Kathy Page. She was our only principal supervisor to start this school year. It took really just until October for us to say, what were we thinking? So we increased it to 2, and we have Dr. Charlotte Ellis, who is our second principal supervisor, and we are increasing it again for next year to 3. We're excited that Hector Mendez, who is currently the Barge Lincoln Elementary School principal, will be joining that team as our third principal supervisor for next year. We also plan to continue our partnership with the University of Washington District Leadership Design Lab for their technical support. They have really shepherded districts through this process for a number of years. And what's great is that they've worked out a lot of the bugs. And so we are having the benefit of that wisdom. So continuing to have coaching for principal supervisors, for myself and for Superintendent Green. We are looking at that individual learning plan model and piloting that with our principal supervisors currently, but we will be piloting it with principals next school year. And then they also provide training and coaching for departments, the teaching and learning department and the human resources department transformation. So with that, I will leave you with this quote from Jim Collins, who is the good to great guy. So in the book Built to Last, great performance is about 1% vision and 99% alignment. So we have a wonderful district strategic improvement plan, which sets the vision for us. And now in order to make that possible, we have to get serious about alignment. And so hopefully you're seeing those arrows heading the same direction going forward. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from board members? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have one question just on the thing you just talked about with alignment. And what's your perception of the degree of buy-in at the front line level in the strategic plan? Or, when we watch reports from our building principals, I get the sense that they really are pretty focused on that. But that's another thing to see it at that level and then see it at the classroom level. What kind of commitment are we seeing to the strategic plan at the classroom level?
I think that folks are fairly committed to those 5 overarching goals. I mean, I don't think any of us would argue that the things that have been identified are good for kids and would be good for our community long term. But in terms of getting into the weeds of actualizing that, I think given surviving through the pandemic and COVID and school closures, that folks have really just had more emergent things top of mind. And so now, as we are hopefully coming to the end of the pandemic, I think that people are starting to think about that strategic improvement plan again and, okay, what does that mean? And what are we going to do next with that? In terms of the 3 strategies we've identified, we've been doing a lot of information sharing via every meeting that you can imagine, our teaching and learning newsletter, and a variety of other avenues with staff. And we truly will build that professional learning community model with staff who are on the ground. So it will be a very collaborative process and truly led by our teachers, our building principals, facilitated by teaching and learning. But truly, we won't be the ones any longer to sort of set the rules for the folks in the field. We're really here to support them as they carry out their vision.
Oh, thank you. And I also wanted to just add a couple compliments. I love the fact that all new teachers will be receiving strategic mentoring. I think that's a way to keep people in the field and help them get off to a good start. I had a couple other questions when you were talking earlier on about staffing challenges. We know that it's a nationwide issue in terms of finding special education teachers, especially. And I just wondered, how are we doing with recruiting and retaining special education teachers and dual language teachers? Because we know that's part of the strategic plan, and we need fluently bilingual teachers that are able to implement that plan. So where are we with those positions?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Director Walker. It continues to be a challenge to fill special education positions as well as bilingual support positions. So it's not just the teachers in our dual language classrooms, which is scaling up. So as you guys know, we have currently 4 elementaries that have kindergarten dual language. They will all have kinder and first grade next year. We're adding 3 additional elementaries. So at that point, actually over half of our elementaries will have dual language programs that have started. We have currently about 20 bilingual positions that are posted. And I know that we do not have enough applicants for all of the positions that we currently have. Our human resources department is thinking through and working towards a longer term, I think, recruitment retention plan. But we do have staff that have been at every job fair you can imagine at universities. They've reached out to departments of education. We have certainly worked with existing student teachers, especially in those high needs areas, and offered letters of intent to hire for those that had the recommendation of their supervising principal. So we're continuing to build that plan going forward. At this time, it's definitely still a challenge. We're excited. Tomorrow, we're going to be meeting with our partners in education group. And one of the tasks we have for them is, what do you do in your business to recruit staff and to see what kind of ideas we can glean from our business community here in Yakima?
Sure. I was just curious about the role or what the duties are of the academic specialist. And then my second question is leadership and organizational development. Is that embedded in this plan? Because I don't think I heard or saw that in.
Sure. Yeah. So academic specialists and behavior specialists actually have very similar job description. It's just the content that we're focused on. So academic specialists are really the ones who are taking a look at data of the students within that school, helping to identify students that might need additional supports through a response to intervention model. That's really the academic side of MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support, where the behavior specialists would focus through PBIS, our positive behavior interventions and supports, which is really that side of the house. And we think about kind of our core, our tier 1 instruction, which is what all kids get, is on grade level. Our academic and behavior specialists are really designed to take a look at who might need a little something more or a little something different, and then work with teachers to identify what those interventions might be. They could provide training to teachers on how to implement that intervention through differentiation and grouping within their classroom, which would be a tier 2 type model. They might also be providing some of those interventions to a small group or one-on-one, which might be more of a tier 3 type model. So they're really part of that key office team that's there to make sure that every single student succeeds. And then your other question around leadership development, when we talk about induction, mentoring, and coaching, we mean not just for teachers, but also for leaders. So that induction of new administrators within our district is something that we're working towards. And as we build out the 3-year induction model for teachers, our goal is to then mirror that for administrators and think about what that might look like for them. We do currently have mentoring for new administrators. They're paired with a mentor, and we have some supports in place, but we want to, again, expand that further for them. And also looking at our administrative interns and those kinds of pieces. So we do have leadership development for leaders throughout the system, both at the building and at the district level. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. One of my first one-on-ones back in the fall as a new member was with you, and I was gently overwhelmed with the information as I left your office that day. And so I really appreciate this because it's a great follow-up. And this really speaks to the brass tacks of almost every conversation I have with someone in our community, which revolves around the expectations that the community has for our district, and just the pure desire to know what's the plan and what's the future. And to see this laid out like this is helpful, and it's inspiring, and it really does help. Hopefully not just the new guy, but everybody. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope that this provides information, not just for you as board members, but really truly for our families and our community. I've been sharing a lot of this information with our staff and building level meetings and grade level band meetings. And so I think just the more that we can get this out there, it allows us to think about how we can partner with our community to achieve these very specific goals.
I think I have a few questions as well. You talked about revised budget tracking to better align revenue to support the students who are bringing that revenue in. Is that another slide or other data point? I'd be interested to see that information. So I don't know if that could be included on an annual or maybe the monthly financial update. It would be really helpful to see how that is aligning as we move forward.
I think it is super in the weeds. So if you would like
Okay.
to sometime sit down, I could walk you through, but it's a separate spreadsheet for every building. It's something that our principal supervisors go over
Okay.
with their principals on a monthly basis. It's tying up the funding of specific positions to certain budget codes. So it's kind of
Okay.
pretty far behind the curtain, if you will, around the financial running of the district, but I'd be happy to sit down and walk you through it sometime.
Okay. Yeah. You talked about some staffing changes in your department and rerouting those. I think you said 10 FTE to the school buildings. I just want to applaud that. I know that can be a pretty hard shift to make from admin to the school building. And so I imagine the schools are over the moon about having some additional support there. So applaud that work and really the overall plan and how you laid out the really intentional and thoughtful approach to identifying what we're doing now, what we need to do better, and creating this overall plan. Are there key performance indicators that you all have developed to measure how you're doing on this specific plan? I know obviously student outcomes obviously is the main indicator I think that we're mostly interested in, but curious to see what other indicators, to hear about what other indicators you might have in place to measure the progress of this specific plan.
Sure. So from I'll kind of go in backwards order, if you will. So from principal supervision, there's a set of principal supervisor standards that have been developed by the University of Washington. And so we are really using those standards to determine principal practice, which is really the outcome of principal supervision, is if we're seeing growth in those specific standards and measures. With induction, mentoring, and coaching, we are developing that program. So developing the assessment by which we measure it will come after we have the program completely put together. There are, however, through OSPI mentoring standards. So those really form the foundation of that program that we're in the process of refining right now. And on the professional learning communities, or PLCs, it's really something that will be built with our teachers and with our schools and our school leaders. So as we embark on this PLC journey with them, one of the pieces that comes out of that is really clearly identifying collaboration expectations and how are we doing in terms of our work together. It's also looking at the specific standards and measuring students along the way through formative assessment, particularly common formative assessments, or what you'll call CFAs. You'll hear that said. That's what they're speaking to. So when we think about things like state assessment data, it truly is a lag measure. It's autopsy data, if you will. To really impact student learning, we have to be thinking about the practice in the moment, which is around those common formative assessments, which should really be happening all the time in classrooms. It can be very simple to very complex. And those teachers talking about how did our kids do? How do we provide intervention if needed? How do we provide extension for students who are ready for something more rigorous, more challenging? And how do we maybe learn from each other about which strategies work to teach a given concept?
On strategy 3, you talked about adding some principal supervisor positions. What's the funding stream for that, and is that sustainable in the coming years?
It is. So I've done a lot of, I was teasing my team last week. I feel like Mickey Mouse and Fantasia, like I'm making the mess. I'm spilling water all over the place within my own department. So we had a pre-K 12 programs executive director position, which was the position Dr. Ellis was actually hired for last summer. We completely disbanded that job in order to have another principal supervisor. It was that important to take the other responsibilities that were assigned to her and redistribute them among the existing staff. So for example, she still oversees the migrant program, which was part of her original job, but she no longer oversees PE, health, and visual and performing arts and world languages. Those are now owned by our 3 curriculum directors. So we reallocated the workload in order to generate that second principal supervisor. For the 3rd position, which Mr. Mendez will fill, we have currently Dr. Pam Onsing, who is our OSSI school improvement executive director. And again, we are taking those duties and distributing them amongst that principal support team, as well as other support staff within our department in order to create that 3rd principal supervisor position. So we have not added really any jobs within our department. We have moved around or cut. The one exception would be we added 1.5 of the induction mentors for next year for teachers, but that was really a trade-off with several more positions which were transferred out of our department.
Well, thank you so much. Again, this was a very comprehensive overview, and it was helpful for those of us who've been on the board for a few years to see everything that's happening and the plan that you all have designed. So thank you so much for this presentation and for all the work. I can imagine this is a pretty big lift to assess what's going on and determine what needs to happen to ensure the best outcomes. I do have one request. On the earlier slides, you talked about a 90-90-90
Study.
If you could you share that with us? I'd be really
Sure,
interested
I'd be happy to.
read that a little bit more and understand that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from board members?
I just wanted to say thank you for the job, the job well done on that plan. I really love the attitude, the energy that you're showing today in terms of examining all the, your department really and changing and improving and reorganizing. And it sounds exciting, and it sounds like you're taking or making changes that are going to be most effective for our kids and all those kids in the district to help them to achieve academically. So I just wanted to commend you for that. And I just love that energy and the change that's going on and the vision that you have for the department, your department. So once again, thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you.
I'd just like to echo that too. And there were a couple other things I heard today I'm excited about. We all know that we have to do summative assessments to meet state standards, and it kind of sees how a district as a whole is going, but it's really not that helpful to individual students. And what really is formative assessments that are done regularly and skillfully, and then utilizing that information effectively. And in fact, in my special ed training 45 years ago, we called it direct and daily measurement. And I think that's the key in moving kids forward is direct and daily measurement, knowing where they are, knowing what they're doing, training people in our system, all of them, how to do that effectively. So it's been a long time coming, but I'm excited to hear that language about formative assessment.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda are items of board interest. There are a few items that I'd like to review here. First is an upcoming training, the WASDA, the new equity training that is required of all school board members will be provided Am I reading that right, Barb? It'll be provided at the August 8th retreat. So we'll be able to do the training as a collective, in addition to holding our retreat on August 8th. Just want to confirm everyone has August 8th on their calendars. Everyone's showing up.
Yes.
Awesome. WASDA annual conference is November 17 to 19 and in Spokane this year. I haven't looked at the website yet. I imagine this will be in person only this year. Nice. That will be nice to go back to quote unquote normal status. Encourage all the board members to attend. It's always really, really great information and a good opportunity for the board to learn together. For anyone who might be interested in the National School Board Association National Conference next year, which will be April 1 to 3 in Orlando. If that's something that you're interested in, please let Barb know. I imagine registration is not yet available for that, but we have, you can have the dates in mind if that's something you want to plan for. Then reminder about board elections. I believe there's 2 people that are up for election this year. I guess it's either 2 or 3 next year. So no one's up this year? Okay.
I'm biased when you have it done, but
Okay.
that's it.
Okay. Well, just a reminder, if that was May, usually is that opening time for registration. The Open Public Meetings Act in Washington State has some new components to it, approved by the legislature in this last session. And as I understand it, though, of all of the changes, we're in compliance with all but one, and the one we are not currently in compliance in, which we would need to be in compliance in by June 9th, 2022. And that is we need to offer an opportunity for public comment at all of our meetings. We currently only offer public comment at our business meeting. So beginning June 9th, any meeting on June 9th and after will have a public comment added to the agenda. And was there any, Barb, when you and I talked about that, there was a question on whether we needed to do 2 opportunities for public comment like we do in our business meeting, or if 1 opportunity would suffice.
Barb's asking me to respond. 1 would be sufficient,
Okay.
as long as it's related to an item on the agenda.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we usually have public comments for agenda items. I'm trying to think, it's before, well, the consent agenda, but we don't have a consent agenda. So would we just have that at the end of our meeting?
Right. It's usually during the items of board interest, the first,
Okay.
right after the superintendent's update. Becky usually does the financial update, and then we have that first item at that point for public comment.
Okay. And that's what we'll do moving forward then? Okay. Yep. Guess that was a question. Does that sound okay with the board member with the board that we'd add the public comment opportunity during the section of the agenda where it's items of board interest?
Sure.
I guess my only question is if it's coming down to state law, why wait? Is there a reason to not just begin the practice immediately?
No,
Bob, any thoughts on if we start now? Start the public comment opportunity, adding that to agenda for meetings moving forward?
We could start it immediately.
Okay.
Like you said, the law doesn't go into effect until June 9, but we could start it as soon as possible if we want.
Okay. Yep. Let's do that with our next meeting.
Sure will.
I'm just wondering about limiting that to comments regarding the agenda items. Is that in the law, or is that something that we can decide to do or not do?
The new law requires that we allow comment on action items. So if you take any action on an item in your Monday meetings, there has to be an opportunity for the public to comment. You could expand that and allow comment on non-agenda items as well. The law only requires that we provide the comment for action items. If you want to have the same process that we have on our Tuesday meetings, that would work as well.
Is that what are you suggesting that we offer a second opportunity for comment?
Well, maybe not a second, but just have both, have that one period be for both agenda and non-agenda related
Okay.
comments.
That's
It just gives the community an opportunity if they have something they want to bring before the board that they can do that. So.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, unless it became overwhelming with comments at times, but it hasn't been the case historically. So I think it could just be open to either agenda items or none. Yeah.
And Director Rice has a question. Go ahead, Martha.
I just have a comment on this. If in fact we're going to move to taking both agenda and non-agenda items, I personally would prefer that they that we have separate comment periods. I think it could lead to confusion if you have some people commenting on agenda items and some people commenting on whether the sky is blue today. And I don't mean to be flip about it, but I think there needs to be some separation. And if that's with two separate comment periods, our Friday meetings are, our Monday meetings are such that those who would want to speak on non-agenda items, and if we maintain the same format as we have now, they wouldn't have to wait very long between the first comment period and the second comment period. Thank you.
Thanks, Martha. I think that makes a lot of sense to me too, to have two separate opportunities. I think when people sign up to speak, and last Tuesday was a really good example, all those reasons were kind of mixed in. And so I think it would be helpful to have two separate meetings for that. Any concerns about having two separate? Other thoughts, recommendations? Yep. Good suggestion, Raymond. I think the more opportunity for the community to provide thoughts or comments to us, I think that would be a really positive thing. Just a reminder, at our last meeting, we began a new process where the board responds in writing to public comments. And so I imagine we would want to continue that for all of those opportunities. So if we get to the point where there's a very high volume of people commenting, we'll ask each board member to take some ownership in sending that response to the community members.
Now, have those responses been sent? Because I didn't see a copy of those for the last meeting of written response to public comment.
Not yet.
Okay, are those coming from you or from Martha or?
They're being finalized and they'll
Yeah.
be out tomorrow.
Okay, I was just curious because I hadn't seen anything on that. Okay. One other thing coming up is also the May 5th is the Area 8 meeting for Wasa, the regional meeting for Wasa. So I plan on attending. I think Trevor's attending, so I don't know if anybody else is, but that's coming up. The opportunity to meet with folks in the region. So.
And the last item under members of the board is a discussion around honors convocation. President Rice.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Barb and I had a brief over the phone type session today with Henry Sampson, who is the staff member that was that volunteered to lead the kind of coordinate honors convocation this year. And we had a conversation about the agenda for honors convocation. It's been 2 years since we've had an in-person honors convocation. And there are at least one of us that, maybe two of us that have not been through honors convocation. This is an activity of the board. And so typically what we do is at a meeting such as this, we go through the agenda and talk about who wants to volunteer to do what topic, what area of the agenda. So honors convocation opens up with an opening statement from a board member. And that board member then also introduces the student or students who will be leading the flag salute. We've added a land acknowledgement to honors convocation. So that could either be the board member who's doing the opening statement and welcome, or it could be someone else. Then there is a message from the board, and that's usually a board member talking to those in attendance about honors or some kind of pearls of wisdom from the board to our students. That's followed by a message from the superintendent. And then a board member will read all of the names individually of those students who are receiving their honors convocation medal and certificate. The principals, the high school program principals, the board members, and the other board members, not the one who's reading the names, and the superintendent and perhaps some of his cabinet form a receiving line to congratulate those students. And the last two people in that line are board members, one who hands off the medallion, the honors convocation medallion, and the other one who hands out the certificates that they receive. So we need a volunteer for that, for the reading of names. And we also need a volunteer for closing remarks from a board member. And that person's role is to kind of hold the audience in place while the students exit and reconvene outside of the auditorium where they'll get a group picture. So in review, we need a board member volunteering for the opening statement and perhaps the land acknowledgement, a volunteer for the message from the board, a volunteer to read names, and a volunteer for closing remarks. So the ball is back in your court.
Okay. Martha, will you be volunteering for any component?
Well, we also talked about live streaming and allowing for, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get there. But if we can provide a virtual kind of environment, I could certainly be there virtually. And you know how I feel about the names.
Well, so I was asking. Do you want to take that, or do you want to, I guess we could assign somebody else pending as a backup. So if you're not able to do that component.
Well,
Right.
I guess it would depend on whether or not we can manage. I mean, we do it for board meetings. We should be able to manage a virtual component for honors convocation. And I'd be happy to be the disembodied voice reading names.
Okay. And where's the location of honors convocation?
It's at the Eisenhower Auditorium.
Okay. Okay. And then as I recall, there's a script that's provided for the opening statement and closing remarks.
Yes. Henry Sampson is working on the script, and making sure that all the pieces and parts are in there. Barb committed to get to him tomorrow the names of board members so that he can insert them in the right places.
Okay. I think we have a unwritten hazing ritual where the newest board member has the opportunity to share the message from the board.
It's not really hazing. It's a wonderful opportunity to impart your pearls of wisdom to these students.
All right. So
I'm happy
Ryan's
to do
doing-
anything that's needed as well.
Okay. So there's opening statement. Do you have a preference, Raymond? Okay. All right, Raymond will do the opening. Norm, do you want to do the closing remarks?
I'll do the closing, sure.
All right, I can read the land acknowledgement. Martha has the names, and then the medallions and certificates. Whoever's closest can do that. Let's volunteer. Who wants to hand out the medallions? I'll do the medallions. Do you want to do the certificates too?
I can do either the medallion or certificates, whichever is.
Okay, so Raymond will do the opening statement. I'll read the land acknowledgement. Ryan will deliver the message from the board. Martha will read names. I'll hand out medallions, and Norm will hand out certificates. And Norm is also providing closing remarks. Sound good? Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you for reminding us about that process, Martha. Any
Happy to do
other
that.
reports from members of the board?
I think just for Ryan, usually the board speaks on community involvement, community engagement, and how to do that and still be successful post high school. So just a thought on what we've done in the past.
So if I budget for 45 or 50 minutes, we should be okay.
Sure.
How much time is generally allotted to the message from the board? It's not long.
I think it's about 5. I've seen 10 minutes before. Yeah. So.
Usually it's 5 to 10 minutes.
I'll connect with President Rice and have a one-on-one if that's okay before we plan this. But I look forward to it.
23rd. That's on my calendar.
Okay. We wanted to also begin, some of you, actually maybe just you, Raymond, might remember, we used to review the calendar, the board calendar during each meeting under items of board interest. And I thought that would be a good practice for us to get back into. So we are reminded of upcoming meeting dates and any recognition events or other kinds of special meetings that we need to be at or be reminded about. So let's look at that. Oh, I can't read it. I can't read that. I can see it, but I can't really read it. It's too small. Can you expand it? Or is this in in Board Docs library where I can access? Here we go. Okay, so we are, it is April 25. There's open house for the class of 2026 at Davis and Ike this evening at 6:30. Partners in Education meeting is tomorrow here at Central Services at 11:30. This Friday is the Excellence in Education Gala. That is what was formerly known as Crystal Apple Awards, and that is being put on by Yakima Schools Foundation. That is at 6 o'clock at the Eisenhower. Is that in the auditorium? I will be attending that meeting. Other board members attending the Excellence in Education forum.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then next week, the Yakima School District Accountability Audit meeting will be virtual. That is at 11:30. Do we have a board member attending that meeting? Norm? Okay. Also on May 5th is a Wasa Regional 8 meeting. Norm was just talking about that in Hera at 6 o'clock, and I think Norm also is the only one attending that. Is that correct? And then the following week, May 9th, board meeting here at 3:30. And as a reminder, we're continuing in a hybrid mode. Business meeting on May 17th at the Eisenhower Auditorium, honors convocation on May 23rd, also at Eisenhower. Tuesday the 24th is the May 24th, the CTE recognition meeting. That'll be nice. It's been a few years since we've, a couple of years at least, since we've had the opportunity to recognize the CTE students and all the work that they're doing. And then a couple of upcoming events that are yet to be scheduled, the Black Elegance event and the Native Ceremony and Celebration. The Union Gap Yakima School District special board meeting has been rescheduled to May 31st at 6 o'clock. I'm going to double check my calendar here. Are all board members attending
Is this
that
in our-
meeting?
is this calendar in our minutes? Is this in the board docs, the calendar you're looking at?
I can add it to that.
Can you send it out?
You
to us?
betcha.
Yeah, if you would.
I can just go through and confirm that there's a lot of stuff coming up. I'm pretty sure most of it's on my calendar, but I want to make sure.
The May 31st special meeting, Barb, is there an Outlook and calendared invitation for that?
Yes, it's on all of your calendars.
Okay.
Are you seeing it?
Sure, it's not on mine. Okay. And then that moves us into graduation season, June 6th, board meeting, Yakima online graduation on June 8th, Staten graduation also on June 8th at 5 and 7 o'clock. Board meeting Monday, June 13, Davis High School graduation on Davis High School graduation at the Sundome, also on June 13, and Eisenhower graduation on Tuesday, June 14 at the Sundome. And I will pause there. There are quite a few very important events coming up. So Barb, you said you'll update this in board docs and ask all the board members to take a look at that calendar and their own calendars to ensure that they have these meetings on their calendars.
Graciela?
Superintendent's update is next on the agenda. Superintendent Green.
Looks like President Rice has her hand up.
Go ahead, Martha.
Will the May 31 meeting be in person only, or will it be hybrid as well?
It will be hybrid.
Thank you.
Do you hear that, Martha? It'll be a hybrid meeting.
I did hear that. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Proceed. Thank you. In just mentioning a few things about honors convocation, you did call that out. That's at Eisenhower, May 23rd, 6 p.m. We do have also, when we're looking at some of these events, I know that we have Davis and Eisenhower tonight, the incoming freshmen, and we do have Norm. You're scheduled to go to both locations. Director Walker and Director Beckett, we have you down for Davis, just to confirm. Wonderful. And in also mentioning the convocation, one of the things that came to mind was the work that we have our interns doing in assisting in planning. Over the last couple of years during the pandemic, we tapped our interns as part of this process. So these are individuals who are seeking to get their administrative credential. They spend the year working closely with leaders in our district. And that first year, when we went into the pandemic, we reached out to Chris Whitehurst, and he led that process. The reason that this is important to know is just this pathway that we've been able to develop. As I look at the last 3 individuals that have been involved with honors convocation, we have Chris Whitehurst, who is now an assistant principal at Ridgeview. Gabe Stotts oversaw Convocation last year and assisted in that process, and he was just named an assistant principal at Lewis and Clark Middle School. And then we have Henry Sampson working on that this year, and he was just named an assistant principal at Eisenhower High School. So it's wonderful that we're having so many new additions to the district and that we have these pathways. And speaking of pathways, I know one of the questions during the wonderful presentation by Dr. Rodriguez was around the pathway, or around the securing of staff around recruitment. I think the one thing I would like to just add to that is that we are working on these pathways, and that's really the way to secure that we have, assure that we have homegrown individuals. Typically, our paraeducators are those that are within our district and that stay in our district. And so creating a way for them to then become a teacher, albeit dual language or special education, is a process that we're working on currently. So I wanted to call that out as well. The only announcement I really have then for tonight on the superintendent update is around an approval and action item that took place on November 16th of last year, or of this school year. And it was brought to the board by Dr. Jenny Rodriguez, and it regarded PK-12 Balanced Assessment Management System. And the background information was, it was as we prepared to engage in alignment of the multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS, access to timely and balanced assessment data. It was critical to have that to serve students. What has happened in the interim is the approved action by the board was to allocate the requested $320,000 out of ESSER funding for this management system. What has actually happened is a little bit of good news. We have a lower price that's come in. So there were 3 components to that management system. We opted to only go with 2 of those management options. So because in assessing, we were able to do the other one internally. So the $320,000 price tag is actually $192,960, which is a savings of $127,040. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the board and let you know that that approval is significantly lower than what was first granted by the board. Other than that, I don't have any other report out to the board this evening, unless you have any questions that I could answer.
Thank you, Superintendent Green. It's not often that we see cost savings in some of those things that we approve. So thank you for sharing that with us. Any questions or comments from board members? Okay. The next item on the agenda are approvals. First, we have a request for approval to pay YVC for Running Start program tuition and fees. And Dr. Rodriguez is presenting this item.
Thank you, Vice President Villanueva, members of the board. I am here this evening to request permission to pay the Yakima Valley College Running Start program tuition and fees for winter quarter of the 21-22 school year. The total amount is $393,670.77. It is directly linked to Goal 5, persistence through graduation and beyond. It is worth noting that we make this payment 3 times a year for each quarter. So over the course of the year, we have flow-through funding of approximately $1 million that goes to YVC for the courses that our students take. For winter quarter of this year, we had 170 students hailing from Davis High, Eisenhower High, Stanton Academy, and Yakima Online who benefited with the free tuition that's provided through this program. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments from board members? We'll entertain a motion that the Board of Directors grants approval to pay YVC for Running Start program tuition and fees for winter quarter 2021-2022 in the amount of $393,670.77.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Norm, seconded by Ryan. Is there any discussion? Barb, will you conduct roll call vote, please? Director Beckett?
Aye.
Director Walker?
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.?
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva,
Aye.
President Rice.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Next, we have approval for Superintendent Green to travel to Wasa Superintendent's Conference. Superintendent Green.
Thank you, Vice President Villanueva. The WASA stands for Washington Association of School Administrators. They have one of their annual conferences that occurs every year, obviously, is in May 1st through 3rd in Lake Chelan. The fiscal impact is actually coming out of the superintendent's budget. The requested action is to approve attendance to the superintendent conference. Background information includes this 3-day experience with keynote speakers on many topics relevant to the YSD, and will also be updated on legislative impact across the state. It's a great conference to network, and it's one that is only available to superintendents within the state of Washington. The request is for approval.
Any questions or comments from board members? We'll entertain a motion that the Board of Directors approves travel for Superintendent Green to Wasa Superintendent's Conference in Lake Chelan, Washington on May 1st to 3rd.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Norm, seconded by Ryan. Is there any discussion? Barbara, do you conduct roll call vote, please?
Director Beckett,
Aye.
Director Walker,
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva,
Aye.
President Rice.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. The next item is request for approval for Superintendent Green again to travel to AWSP Wasa Summer Conference. Superintendent Green.
I really need to spread these out over a couple of meetings, so it's either feast or famine. It's feast right now. So we have an additional WASA conference at Washington Association of School Administrators. This does occur annually in the month of June. It is a combined conference hosted by WASA in conjunction with AWSP, which is the Principals Association in the state. The attendance at this conference is much greater than the one that I just detailed in Chelan, as it has district administrators from across the state. Occurs annually in Spokane. Additional importance of this conference is that I will be presenting with Marcello Scambolari, who's focused on our equity program manager position. And we will be presenting on student voice and the work that we're doing here within the district. In addition, the theme is You Belong Here. Sessions focus on inclusion, collaboration, climate culture systems, leadership across the system. Wonderful speakers. And of course, Chris Reichdahl is there speaking as well, also updating legislative moves and providing updates on that. The request is to attend from June 26th through June 28th. And I'll leave it to you as a board.
Questions from board members? I will entertain a motion that the Board of Directors approves travel for Superintendent Green to the AWSP Wasa 2022 Summer Conference in Spokane, Washington on June 26th to June 28th.
Second.
Moved by Raymond, seconded by Norm. Is there any discussion? Barbara, do you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Director Beckett,
Aye.
Director Walker,
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva,
Aye.
President Rice.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Next on the agenda are two policy governance monitoring reports. The first is report 1000.2.0 Global Executive Constraint. And Bob No is presenting that. Do you want to kick things off with Superintendent Green?
I'll pass this directly to Bob.
Thank you. On policy 1000.2.0 Global Executive Constraint, that policy provides the superintendent will not cause or allow any practice, activity, decision, or organizational circumstance which is either unlawful, imprudent, or in violation of commonly accepted business and professional ethics and practices. Further, the superintendent will abide by all negotiated agreements or rectify any violations as expeditiously as possible. Imprudent means without thought of the consequences and lacking in judgment or caution. The superintendent is in compliance with this policy.
Is there any questions or comments from board members? We usually have an evidence of compliance or a report that goes along with this, or are you providing just a verbal report today?
I don't have a written evidence of compliance. I can provide that, but in terms of this policy, because I'm basically monitor this as legal counsel, I
Okay.
have no evidence that the superintendent has not been in compliance. Everything shows compliance.
Okay.
I would, if I may, thank you for calling that out. I would recommend that we come back with that list for you, both on this and the subsequent.
Do we want to delay the next policy monitoring report for that written report?
The 1000.2.9, I believe, yes, I would recommend that.
Okay. We will reschedule both of these then. Is that what we're saying? We'll reschedule both for review at
Yes.
another? Okay. Okay. And this is not an action item, right? So we're not approving anything today, so we don't need any special process to transfer these to another date? Okay.
Director Rice?
Because it's a change to the agenda, we should probably have a motion and a vote to table this to a future meeting, just so that we're in compliance and nobody can call us out on our process.
Okay. Barb, do you know what meeting we might move these policy reviews to?
Yes, they could fit into the May 9th agenda, the next Monday meeting.
Okay. I will entertain a motion that the board reschedule the monitoring reports for 1000.2.0 and 1000.2.9 to the May 9th board meeting.
So moved.
Do we need to include a reason for moving it, or are we just moving it just to move it, I guess, is
It would,
what the
it would
record
be
should
for the
show.
purpose of my providing the written evidence in support of each of
Yes.
the policies.
Second.
So is that a formal amendment to the motion? Is that what we're doing?
Well, yeah, that's what I'd like to
That's
do.
what,
Yes.
okay. So these are like nested of motions. So I
Graciela?
need some help in figuring out how
I would
to.
second Raymond's amendment to the original motion.
Okay, any discussion about Raymond's amendment to the motion?
No.
And so now we need to vote on the amendment, right? Roll call vote, please, on the amendment to the motion to add the reason, which is for Bob No to provide a written report.
Director Beckett,
Aye.
Director Walker,
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva, President Rice.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Oops, now we're back to the original motion to move the two agenda items to the May 9th meeting. We had a motion. I don't recall if we had a second.
Second.
Yes, Ryan
You-
seconded.
okay, yeah.
Ryan, second. Is there any discussion?
No.
Barbara, do you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Director Beckett,
Aye.
Director Walker,
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva,
Aye.
and President Rice.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is policy governance, discussion of board policies. There are 4 policies here. We discussed these policies in our 2 board meetings ago and responded to surveys and are now coming back to review the results of the survey and determine if we will accept and approve the results of the survey. The first is policy 1000.3.1, governing style. All 5 board members responded to the survey. There was indication on 3 items that the board is partially compliant. On item F, which is the board of directors will govern lawfully with an emphasis on collective rather than individual decisions. 3 voted for compliant, 2 voted for board is partially compliant. Item G, future rather than past or present. 3 board members voted the board is compliant and 2 voted board is partially compliant. And H, proactivity rather than reactivity. 4 board members voted compliant and 1 board member voted partially compliant. And there are 2 comments. The first comment is there is not alignment between all board members and board decisions and practices. We've committed to discussing these challenges at our next retreat. And the next comment is some board members continue to cycle back to past decisions of the board and question those decisions. The board works as a collective and functions as a group. Past decisions of the board, unless revised or revoked, apply to current and future board members. This may be a topic for a future study session or a discussion at the retreat. The first comment is mine. I don't have anything else to add. We've already discussed at previous meetings that we'll discuss those topics at the board retreat on August 8th. And does the board member who wrote the second comment wish to expand on their comments?
Graciela, that was my comment.
Please.
I don't think there's any expansion necessary. I just wanted to get it on record.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That was question 1 of this policy. Question 2, 4 board members voted compliant and 1 said partially compliant, and that was the board cultivates a sense of group responsibility. The board, not the staff, will be responsible for excellence in governing. Board is initiator of policy, not a reactor to staff initiatives. And there is not a comment here. The board member who voted partially compliant, will they please share why?
I'm assuming that was mine, and we can wait till the retreat.
Okay.
Same scenario.
The next, question 3, board uses policy governance as the model. 4 board members said compliant, 1 said partially compliant, and there was no written response. Does a board member who said partially compliant wish to expand on their rationale? Just as a reminder, as a board, we've committed to anytime we are marking anything other than board is compliant, that we've committed to providing a comment or response so we can understand why those comments are why you're answering it in that way. The next question, question 4, 4 board members voted compliant, 1 said partially compliant. There are no comments. Question 4 is the board will direct, control, and inspire the district through the careful establishment of broad written policies reflecting the board values and perspectives. Does the board member who voted partially compliant wish to share their comments? I'm not checking are there any hands raised? No. Okay. Question 5. Question 5, bullet 4.4 and 4.7 shows 1 board member voting partially compliant on both of those. That is putting the team and team goals first and supporting the majority. And I don't see a section for comments there. That may have been mine, and I don't remember how I voted on that one, but that may have been my vote, and that would have been related to the previously submitted items that we're discussing at the board retreat. And as I scroll through the remainder of the survey, there is a comment on question 10. That for question 10 is any board member may request an evaluation of the board's process and performance of a meeting. And this comment is mine. I think we are compliant, but a question frequently comes up about the board's process and performance of a meeting. I recommend we add a procedure that clearly outlines how a board member can request an evaluation of the board's process and performance of a meeting and how the evaluation is to be done. For example, a forum or open discussion. I don't know that as a board we have procedures written, and I'm not sure how we would capture that as a procedure of the board. But think that, I guess, Raymond, I think you're the one who sometimes asks for an evaluation of the board meeting. Go ahead, Raymond. Or I'm sorry, Barb.
President Rice has her hand up.
I don't have the policy right in front of me, but we do have a policy on meetings, and I think it's in there. It outlines how we would go about requesting requesting an evaluation of a meeting. And at one point we worked on a form that would provide kind of feedback for this process or for our record keeping purposes. I don't know if we finalized the form, but I know at one point we were working on a form.
Okay, there is a, Raymond is saying there is a form on board docs. And so I guess maybe let's just clarify the process now. I think that process is at the end of a meeting before the meeting adjourns, any board member can say, I'd like to request an evaluation of the meeting, at which point we would go to board docs to open that form, go to that form, fill out the form, and then discuss it at that meeting or at the next meeting. Martha, has that been generally the results of the survey, I guess, or the form been reviewed at the next meeting?
I don't recall us ever being asked to do that form. We have it there in case somebody wants to. I would suggest that we have that conversation at that meeting and not put it off. I think it's more, it provides more immediate feedback to whoever's facilitating the meeting or however the board wants to categorize that meeting or discuss the process within that meeting. If there are some suggestions for improvement or something like that. I can take a look at that policy when we're done here and see if my memory is correct, that it already is called out in that policy. But if it's not, I'd be happy to submit a draft to the board along with that form as an appendix.
Okay, thank you, Martha. Reviewing the remainder of this policy, there is agreement that the board is in compliance. There is a response to question 14, which is if the board is not in strict compliance with the policy as stated, what evidence demonstrates the board is not in compliance? And the response is my responses to question 5 are related to previously discussed issue. We've committed to discussing those topics at the August 2022 retreat. That sounds like my comment And I don't have anything to add on to that. And I don't see any other comments. Oops, I just closed out of something. Okay, let's review the, can we group, after we review each policy, are we able to group approve all 4 policies? Would that be an acceptable process? Or should we review and approve individually?
I think that's acceptable, but I have to say that I don't feel comfortable voting on this first policy just because the comments, I'd like to hear more clarification on those comments, because right now, I mean, I'm left to decide in my own mind what those comments mean when we look at zero alignment between board members, some board members going back to previous decisions, questioning those decisions. Those to me are could indicate something deeper, and I don't want to speculate on what somebody may have meant by those comments. So for me, this policy is incomplete until we have that discussion. So I would either abstain or suggest that we not vote on this at this time until we've had that discussion. Because again, those comments to me it could be pretty serious allegations or concerns that have been identified. And I just want to understand those better. And again, I don't have a full explanation. We do have a retreat coming up, but that's not for another few weeks. And I just don't feel comfortable waiting and voting now on when we haven't had that discussion.
So Raymond, you're suggesting we either delay voting until we have a deeper discussion, which is currently scheduled for August 8th, or you're saying you'd be comfortable by abstaining if we move forward?
Or
abstain.
we have the discussion today because we are evaluating this policy right as we speak. So rather than delay the discussion, let's have it now. Or any of those 2 options, whatever the board wishes to do.
Comments or questions from the board?
President
I
Rice?
guess, or I'll defer to President Rice.
Go ahead, Martha.
I know that Raymond has been otherwise tied up during some recent meetings and hasn't been able to participate. But my recollection is that the board did have that discussion when this particular policy was presented, or not this one. Was it 3.0? There was another policy that we discussed, and those items were outlined at that time, and the decision was made at that time to have a deeper discussion about these things at the retreat.
Other questions or comments?
I kind of have a hard time with the questionnaires in general as we go through these, because I think there is this general human nature encouragement to just say everything's compliant, let's not worry about it and keep moving on. But the reality is we all have different opinions. We're 5 different individuals, and we all have different places we come from and different ways we see things. And so I think it's very fair if we have the option to say board is partially compliant. We're working. It's not like things are in disarray, as they say. It's just that something maybe is not completely the way you would maybe want it to see if we were looking at a uniformity of thought. I also don't necessarily think uniformity of thought is 100% healthy. So I like the idea that we can have this conversation at the retreat where we can really kind of talk about it in a little more depth. I don't know procedurally if it's better to just simply approve it to keep things moving forward or to delay it until after that conversation. But I also had questions, and I've just recently asked Dr. Green and Barb, just as far as, as being a newer member, where these came from, where they were, how long they've been in place, what happens to them after we fill them out, where do they go, who sees them, does anyone other than us ever really know what is said on these surveys or not? What does it really mean? Are we scoring ourselves, or is there somebody in a back corner office somewhere keeping tabs on all this? I just don't know. And it seems like there's an awful lot of energy going into this, when really the goal is just simply to get us to discuss amongst ourselves, how do we feel things are going? What do we feel like, as a group, are we doing well, or are there struggles, or are there problems? Is the district doing well? Are we on the right track? Are we following the plan? I think that conversation gets lost as we get further and further into things like the Open Meetings Act, where we have such separation and such a limited ability to have those conversations. So personally, I think it's really better off to do this kind of stuff within the retreat format, but that's just an opinion, and I'm happy to follow along with the group. So.
Well, and the only other question I have in terms of voting or not voting on this is, we're not voting to, we don't have to arrive at consensus on our perceptions. We're voting to approve the report or not. And the report says that most of us feel we're in compliance, and in some sections of it, some of us feel that we're partially compliant. We can approve the report. I don't think we can discuss why those perceptions or feelings or so on exist, but that doesn't stop us from approving the report. I think we can go ahead and improve the report, but we've identified some areas for discussion in the retreat. I don't think we need to wait to the retreat to say, I approve this report. Here it is. We've seen it. So that's kind of my view. I don't think we need to delay approving that we've received this information. So.
Okay. Taking into account the conversation and previous conversations where we have already committed to taking a deeper dive on the comments made here and on previous policy discussions, I think we'll move forward at this time that I guess I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Directors approves the rating for policy 1000.3.1 governing style.
President Rice still has her hand up again.
Go ahead, Martha.
I apologize, and I can touch base with Ryan on this separately if we want to move on with the rest of the agenda. But the board does use these. They are available on the board's website. It takes a week or so to get them up there, but they are available for the community to review. And then the board uses all of this as part of the board evaluation that is done at the retreat on how we can improve our process as well. It's a self-evaluation that the board does. So any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them offline.
I don't remember if there was a motion. I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Directors approves the rating for policy 1000.3.1 governing style.
So moved.
Moved by Norm,
Second.
second by Ryan. Is there any discussion, further discussion?
Yes, I just want to let the board know that I will abstain from voting because I do not have enough information, and the discussion is a big part of the evaluation for me. Even though we do have results, the discussion plays, again, big part. And whether I approve or not, these type of issues for me are very important, because whenever there is an issue, and I don't know if there's an issue or not, because we haven't had a time to elaborate on that. Whenever the board does have any communication or interpersonal communication issues, we've tended not to discuss them. So I know we're going to discuss it in a few months, but every time we push it back and we delay it, there's a possibility of creating problems on the board, further division and further disalignment, or whatever the comment said. So I just want the board just to be aware of that if we can hold off until August, let's not go sideways like we've done in the past, right? And that's my concern. We've been a dysfunctional board in the past, and I really want to avoid being a dysfunctional board going forward, because it does have a severe impact on district and kids and everybody. So I just wanted to make that. Again, I will abstain from voting this time around.
Thank you, Raymond. I agree. It's better to have these discussions sooner rather than later. And we've had some discussions in previous meetings. So know that there's comments in other surveys that we've responded to. I think the discussion probably will go deeper than we're probably prepared to do in a Monday meeting. And so I think it would be better served to have a deeper discussion at a retreat where we have more time. We can take our time and be thoughtful about the comments that we provide. Any other discussion? Barb, will you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Director Beckett,
Aye.
Director Walker,
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.,
I abstain.
Vice President Villanueva,
Aye.
and President Rice.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. The next item for policy governance discussion is policy 1000.3.6, board committee principles. All five board members responded and indicated compliance. I am not seeing any comments. I will entertain a motion that the Board of Directors approves the rating for policy 1000.3.7 board committee principles.
So moved.
Moved by Norm, seconded by Raymond. Is there any discussion? Barb, would you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Director Beckett,
Aye.
Director Walker,
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva,
Aye.
President Rice.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. The next policy discussion is policy 1000.3.7 board committee structure. 5 board members responded and agreed that the board is in compliance with this policy. I don't see any comments. I will entertain a motion that the Board of Directors approves the rating for policy 1000.3.7 board committee structure.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Norm, seconded by Raymond. Is there any discussion? Rob, would you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Director Beckett,
Aye.
Director Walker,
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva,
Aye.
President Rice.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. The next policy discussion is policy 1000.4.0 global governance management connection. 4 board members responded to the survey. All 4 indicated that the board is compliant with this policy. And I do not see any comments. I will entertain a motion that the Board of Directors approves the policy for the rating for policy 1000.4.0 global governance management connection.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Norm, seconded by Raymond. Is there any discussion? Barb, would you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Director Beckett,
Aye.
Director Walker,
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva,
Aye.
President Rice.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our agenda today. Superintendent Green, do we have a need for executive session?
We do. The reason would be current or potential litigation with legal counsel for 20 minutes.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion that the Board of Directors move into executive session for the purpose of current or potential legal litigation with legal counsel for approximately 20 minutes, beginning in 5 minutes at 5:37 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Raymond, seconded by Norm. Is there any discussion?
Will that be held here or in the superintendent's office?
In
In the professional library.
Professional.
professional
Thanks.
library in 5 minutes. Barb, roll call vote, please.
Director Beckett,
Aye.
Director Walker,
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva,
Aye.
President Rice.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. The board requested longer time in executive session, so we have 3 minutes remaining for executive session.
Meeting adjourned.